Good morning. Well, I hope that you are prepared for a fascinating time and a fascinating story because I'm really looking forward to the conversation with our special guest today. So, in the meantime, put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's once again time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. I hope you have your cup of whatever this morning. I have mine for sure. It's one of those days. And by the way, welcome. I see Shalane is on here already. Kim Baker, good morning and afternoon. Happy Catterday. Kim, I cannot even begin to tell you how much, when I see your name pop up, I look for that greeting. It says a lot to me. Kathy is on here, Kathy Garlic. I did cut my hair and I shaved. If you compare my look today with my look a week ago, it's a bit different. Yeah, hey, did you get a haircut? Yes, I did. He mentioned coffee. Everybody drink. Thank you, Shalane. Jay Zetterval is on here. Jerry Thompson, good morning. Good morning. And if you are just tuning in live this morning on Saturday, October 29th, 2022, and you're joining us live, make sure that you do say hello in the chat. Make sure that you participate in the conversation. This is not just me, and it's not just our special guest who I'll be introducing in a few minutes. This is your conversation too. This is looking at people who are commenting here on the side too. I'm getting text messages along with everything else, so that's great. Jim Mockford, good morning. I know that there are some people tuning in today who are here, especially because they're looking forward to seeing our guest and hearing from him, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's been an interesting week. I just want to tell you about a couple of things. That Monday of this week, Carol and I decided we're getting ready to travel next week, and I'll share a little bit more about that too. But we decided probably be a good idea before traveling to get up to date on vaccinations. So we went in on Monday, both of us, and got both our flu vaccine and the most current COVID booster on the same day, same time. And and knowing, I mean, I knew for a fact because I know how my body reacts anymore. I used to be one of those people that when I was younger, I could get a shot, I could get a tetanus shot and not even have a sore arm, not even know where they gave the injection. It was just like my body just went, yeah, vaccine, big deal. Now I get any kind of a vaccine, and I know for a fact that first of all, I'm going to be sore at the injection site. Second of all, it's very likely that I'm going to be down for a day or two. Just that malaise, that fatigue, maybe a low grade fever, which I did run a little bit of. But so that's how the week started. So Monday evening, after we had been at the clinic, got our shots, came home, kind of relaxing around, we had discovered actually a few days before that, that we had some water beginning to leak in our upstairs, our main bathroom, our master bathroom at the toilet, that around the base of the toilet, there was some water, and it wasn't a ton of water, but it was just a little bit of water settling there, and cleaned it up and stuff. And Monday evening, I'd noticed it again, and I went, a thought occurred to me, and I walked downstairs to our basement here, to the room right next to where I'm at, which is directly below that spot. And sure enough, you could see the ceiling, the paint at the ceiling sagging where the water was leaking down. And it's like, oh, great. So over the last few days, we've been in touch. We had a plumber come out here. Yesterday, we had workmen out here. In fact, I had to ask a few minutes ago, if we were getting set up for this, if anybody could hear, because we got one of those now, the blowers in the next room that is both heating, providing the drying out heat and getting the moisture out of there. So that's happening in the room right next to me. So it's been one of those weeks, and just sort of for some reason a very busy week. So I'm glad to be here. Who else is tuned in? I haven't said hi. If I haven't said hi to you yet, make sure that you do make a comment in the chat, and so that we can recognize that you're here. But anyway, how's your week been going? We are getting to that point now. October is coming to a rapid conclusion. We're going to cross into November, the beginning of next week, early next week. And that's the point where it really feels like, I mean, if you're not already feeling like it's autumn, it's definitely autumn. And then a snowball, no pun intended, into winter, right? We start to get right into the holiday season. We're moving toward Thanksgiving and Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate during the season, winter solstice, whatever it might be. And there's just a lot that starts happening now besides the usual, right? And Kim Baker saying last weekend was the pumpkin patch, and now I'm raking leaves again and again and again. And that's the other part of it, right? The deciduous trees. Aren't you glad I know the word deciduous? Deciduous trees start losing their leaves, and we start to have to clean up all of that stuff in our yard. Winterizing. We started going out and covering our patio furniture with the winter covers and the outdoor air conditioning unit. Didn't have to worry about that when we lived in California. But here in Spokane, when winter hits, it's going to be winter. So we have to be prepared for all of that. What are some special days coming up this week? Hi, Jerry Zetterval. And who else did I see? Jonathan Siegel, Johnny and Carol Siegel here. Yes, indeed you are. I mentioned that we got, Monday is Halloween. Monday is Halloween, right? What do you do to celebrate? Are you one of those people? Do you decorate your house up for Halloween in the yard and that kind of thing? Do you hand out candy? What is it like in your neighborhood? Do you, in fact, go out and party, or do you have kids or grandkids or others who you take to trick or treat? And that's changed over the years too in terms of how we do that. There are a lot of different ways to do the candy gathering. Carol and I being involved in church settings over the years, as our kids were growing up, a lot of the churches don't want to focus on Halloween, so they would have harvest festivals. Now that has transitioned again in the last few years. You don't see as many harvest festivals, but you see these trunk or treat events that take place both in churches and just in communities where people back their cars up in parking lots and open the trunk or the tailgate and hand out candy. There are also a lot, I know with our grandsons, they've gone to retirement centers and other places and walk around, and the people in those homes, in those facilities, love to have the young kids come through and be able to hand out candy. So hopefully it benefits everybody. But what do you do? Put out, Kim Baker again, put out fake fall flowers and pumpkins, and can't wait to have some trick-or-treaters come by. That's going to be fun because you're moving to a different place. We don't know that we're going to have many trick-or-treaters just because of the way our community's set up, but we're prepared just in case. All right, let's see. What else is going on? Oh, some of you are going to appreciate this, I know for a fact. November 1st, which is Tuesday, is World Vegan Day. I know some of you are vegans, some are vegetarians, but the idea of both recognizing and celebrating the people who are vegan and who choose that kind of a diet and a lifestyle, because there is a lifestyle that goes with being a vegan, right? Now, for some people, it's all around the health benefits of eating a vegan diet. For others, it's also tied to a social consciousness about not using animal products. That type of thing. So if you are vegan, and even if you're a vegetarian, I want to salute you. But Tuesday is World Vegan Day. This one's interesting. Wednesday, November 2nd, plan your epitaph day. It's the day that you get to plan out, I guess, write out what you want on your gravestone. I've never done that. If it comes to having a grave marker, when that time comes, I'm going to let my family figure out what to put on there, what to say about me. I will tell you this, I have outlined what I would like to have happen at my memorial service. Not specific words. Once again, I'm going to let my family get up and talk about me however they want, but some things that I would specifically like to have involved in that. Have you done that? Have you either written out an epitaph, what you would like to have on your gravestone, or what would you like to have said about you after you pass from this life? What would you like that legacy to be? It's an interesting question. It can also be a bizarre one. It can also get kind of deep sometimes. And then Thursday, November 3rd, is Cliche Day. And I'll just tell you, I avoid cliches like the plague. Sorry. Felt it called for that. And oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, they're going to implode. I did see them. I was in the middle of a sentence, guys. Sorry. Yes, Jason Wheelock, I see that you originally said you're here, sort of, and then Rick Venturi is here. And again, if I have not said hello to you, please do continue to, wave your virtual hand to get my attention, whatever you need to do. And Carla is quietly there. Is okay, good. Thank you. Hi, Carla. When we get into our conversation with our guest, I may or may not remember to say it, but I want you to participate in that conversation as well. Ask your questions, make your comments about what we are talking about. And I want to mention that because we're going to be traveling next week, I'm not going to be here next Saturday. We're going to be in New York. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of today's show. But I wanted to mention a couple of things that are coming up next week that I would have mentioned next Saturday. One is, I hope you're all ready, because next Sunday, middle of the night Saturday, before you go to bed, next Saturday, not tonight, folks, don't get confused. Next week, we go from daylight savings time to standard time. We fall back. We set the clocks back 1 hour in most zones. Does that happen where you are, Kim Baker? I know that there are areas, I don't remember exactly where you are, but I know there are some areas in the Midwest that are on a different, do it differently. But for most people, for most of us in the country, at least for, there's supposed to be some laws being considered that would do away with switching the clocks back and forth and go to a permanent year round just one time. But anyway, next weekend we go back to standard time. And then I also wanted to mention that next Saturday, when I would have been on the air, just a happy birthday to Kathy LeGros, an author and a friend who has appeared on this show in the past, was on here a while back talking about a book that she wrote. Wanted to say happy birthday to Kathy. And if you have a special day coming up this week or even next week, since we're not going to be here, you have a special day coming up, or birthday, an anniversary, something else special that you want to share, put it in the chat right now so that we can celebrate with you. Let's see if there's anybody else who's joined in that I have not said hello to. I don't want to get in trouble again here. All right. So if you are joining the conversation, make sure that we see you in the chat. Make sure you say hello. Make sure that you are a part of this. Make sure you've got your cup of whatever it is that you have a cup of. I think that's it. Do remember to let us know if you have any special, you have any special days coming up. It's interesting seeing some of the comments about going from daylight savings time to standard time. That's interesting. All right. I want to get to our guest. And I want to tell you a little bit about him. John Weller is a violinist and was assistant concertmaster of the Seattle Symphony Orchestra for over 3 decades. He has performed as concertmaster for Seattle appearances of Renee Fleming and Mstislav Rostropovich. And if you don't think that took a little bit of extra effort, I need another drink. I'll say it twice. Mstislav Rostropovich. There's a risk that that's going to come out wrong, but I think I got it. As well as for Marvin Hamlisch's many Pops concerts in Seattle. For 16 summers, he was also a member of Lincoln Center's Mostly Mozart Orchestra in New York, traveling with that group numerous times to Japan. Having studied Japanese obsessively for 3 years, John played a season as a member of the Nagoya Symphony Orchestra in the 1990s while on sabbatical leave from Seattle. A native of Portland, Oregon, John began the violin at the age of 9. Still performing over 100 concerts a year with the Seattle Symphony, John finds peace and balance sailing his boat, Poem, on the, and I hope I pronounced that right. John's going to confirm that in a few minutes, on the waters of Puget Sound and into Canada. Currently, John enjoys ham radio, discovering new recipes, and suffers an addiction to crossword puzzles. We're going to talk about all of those things here, but please join me in welcoming John Weller to Coffee Breaks with Steve. John, welcome.
Good to be with you, Steve. Good morning to your audience.
Oh, man, it's your story. And it's the reason I reached out to you, John, is that everything about your story is fascinating. You know, coming from something of a musical background myself, your story has always fascinated me. And just for the sake of people understanding, I've known John and members of his family since childhood. John was actually in my sister Kathy's class in elementary school and then all the way through high school. And our paths crossed more casually over those years. But I was also, if some of you may recall, a few months back that we had Jonathan and Carol Siegel from New York on the show. Well, Carol Siegel is John Weller's younger sister, and Carol and I have also been friends for years. So all of that just to kind of let you know, how do I know about John Weller? But John, it is interesting to hear your story. You talk about that you started playing the violin at the age of 9, and you're still playing the violin, and it's obviously a big element of your life. How did you even? I mean, 9 years old. What was it about the violin that you decided that's what was the instrument you were going to pick up? And you come from a musical family, and we'll talk about that. But why the violin?
Specifically to that question, I was in the 4th grade, and we were in Berkeley, California for a year in 1963, and I wanted to play French horn, but the music teacher there at Oxford School in Berkeley said, "Well, I understand your brother plays cello, your dad plays keyboard. You should play the violin. That would be a beautiful make beautiful trios." And so I said, "Okay." Having no spine at that age.
Sure, why not?
But the thing is, it seemed like an obvious thing to do right away. And of course, mom and dad being very, very musical. Dad was a church organist all those years, all the years that he was with us practically, and music was playing in the house on our record player all the time.
Was it largely classical music? Was that what you heard mostly growing up at that stage?
Yes. Of various eras, even new music, early music, I should say, and Beethoven, Dvorak, everything.
Yeah.
We knew it all. By the time we were 10, we know all these great pieces of music, and we're moved by them.
Yeah.
It was obvious.
Well, there has to be. I mean, the thing is, John, a couple of thoughts that come to mind. One is you could be in a family where that's playing all the time, and you finally just kind of roll your eyes and go, "Geez, I'm so tired of this." And there was obviously something about that, whether that was a genetic thing or an environmental thing or whatever, that resonated with you, that you listened to that and it had a positive influence. But there's another part of this, and that is, great, you could have taken up the violin at 9 and gotten tired of it after a few years, or never really had an aptitude for it, but you really grew up, and particularly by the time you were in your middle school, high school years, you were considered one of the top young violinists in the region, if not in the country. And I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke at you, but that's just a fact, right?
I was doing very well. I didn't really have my epiphany until I was a late bloomer about age 17. I was studying with a great violin teacher, and I was practicing 5 hours a day by that age. But before that, it was just all a very emotional thing to do. I mean, my first day in the Portland Junior Symphony, I was 12. We're playing Beethoven's Eroica Symphony. I mean, just listen. I think it's a matter of exposure. Listen to that. You're moved by it. It can't help. There's the Mozart effect when you hear Mozart piano concerto playing. You can't help but just cock your head and listen. Go, oh, listen to that.
Yes. And I think you're right, John, and maybe that's a challenge to those who are listening in. If you have not really paid attention to classical music, to a symphony, you don't have to understand the breakdown of all the movements of a symphony or the background of a particular composer to appreciate the emotion that comes from listening to that music. You listen to Handel or Haydn, Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, any of them, and anybody, and even the more modern. I'm going to get off onto a soapbox if I'm not careful. I mean, I could probably have a very in-depth conversation just about that.
No, you're right. You're right.
But and you mentioned the epiphany when you by the time you were getting into high school. What was, talk about that a little bit, because there was really a point there where through that time in high school and studying and beginning to compete in state competitions and that type of thing. I mean, your name was starting to become known, and it became a factor in terms of universities, academies, et cetera, reaching out to you to recruit you to apply, I think, right? I mean, there was a process that was going on there. How did that feel at the point that you were in high school and all of this was happening? Was it a positive thing, or did it start to feel a bit overwhelming?
Oh, no, it was a very positive thing. I was evolving. When I was 10, 12, I could play the violin. I could play in the Junior Symphony. I was moved by the music, but I was still 12 years old. I was extremely naive kid. I had other interests. My friend Greg next door, we, blew up things behind the garage and things like, and that was on my mind too. it evolved, and then the studying with Elaine Ritchie was her name. She was assistant to Ivan Galamian at Curtis back in the 50s and whatnot. She was a tremendous violinist and instructor, teacher. A switch went off, and I started practicing 5 hours a day for real. And that's when I knew where I was going.
Yeah. And that kind of addresses, Shalane asked a question about whether the practice was self-imposed or whether there was,
No. I raced home from school every day. I should have paid more attention to my schoolwork, I suppose. I couldn't wait to get home and practice.
What was, Shalane asked the question, and I'm not sure, Shalane, if you, ever. So this could have been in your younger years, or it could have been in more recent times, but Shalane asked the question, what was the hardest piece you've ever had to play and your favorite piece to play? Is that an easy one to answer, or is that one like, oh man, there's so many options here?
That's easy. No, it's not. Hardest piece to play, I mean, it's hard to play one note beautifully. So that said, the Paganini Caprices are beyond my reach, really.
Wow.
Brahms Violin Concerto. I mean, these things. I became more of an orchestral player, particularly after the crash and burn stage. So these other pieces, I'm hardest. And what was the other question? My favorite.
A favorite.
I always say the Dvorak Cello Concerto. Just being in the orchestra, just being in the room,
just being there, being a part of it. Period.
It will destroy you emotionally. It's so beautiful. It's so powerful.
Look for that one, Shalane. Look for that one, everyone. You just mentioned the crash and burn, and I want to hit that a little bit. You wrote a book a number of years ago now, about 8-10 years ago now, called Violin Down, and you talk about a lot of what we're already talking about here. You talk about your childhood. You talk about picking up the violin at the age of 9 in Berkeley. You talk about this process of it really becoming a part of your being. And you talk about a period of time when you lost that ability to play the violin at kind of a key moment in your life. And I don't know how much you want to go into details, John, but talk a little bit about that crash and burn, because I think it's relevant to understanding not only your story, but I think human story. We all go through times of transition that can be painful, but can lead us forward in life. I don't know how much you want to go into specifics, but talk a little bit about that.
No specifics, please. But I did, at the height of these days when I was practicing so much, I damaged my left hand, and sort of self-inflicted, in fact. You have to read the book, but it was life-changing. It was shattering, actually. And I went from playing Wieniawski and Bach to I couldn't play Yankee Doodle in one day. And it was the wrong time for this to happen. I was I was just about to go off to Indiana University, study with Ruggiero Ricci, who was one of the well-known, Google him. And but I then all of a sudden I could hardly play. And it was it's actually something that I lost it. It's plagued me the rest of my life. It's probably the reason I don't have kids. It's probably the reason I think I went prematurely white up here. And it's been, on the one hand, tragedy of my life, and on the other hand, I would have been someone else if this hadn't happened. Mm-hmm. I became it sort of destroyed my courage, a sense of optimism, sense of certainty about things. I became quite a skeptic about life's bigger questions, and that's sort of where I've been ever since. And just physically, technically, playing the violin has been a struggle since then. But I've recaptured as much as I can, and it's just my daily mission now, is to still try to play like I did when I was 17. It's just the way it is.
Continue to try. I think there's so much in there. And again, I think Kathy Garlick just said your book made her cry. she said, and kind of sick. I mean, there's some deep things that are in that book. Quite frankly, John, we know that. But she says it's a really good read. And I'll just ask really quickly before I want to ask, first of all, why did you think it was important to write the book? What was it? Was there a cathartic element to that? Did you feel it would speak to others? What was the purpose?
First of all, it wasn't my idea. I ran into a total stranger at Starbucks in Portland, and he was getting on my nerves. He was a kind of creepy guy, and I told him, I showed him. We ended up at the same table. I was there to use the Wi-Fi, and I showed him my picture in the Seattle Symphony website, and just to get him to shut up. And then I told him about this, what the Violin Down's about. He says, that's quite a story. You should write a book. That was the switch, and it became then from that moment on an obsession to write this book, and it was mostly for myself, and also I wanted to write it while Dad was still alive, and I wanted to write it for people that knew me, I guess. The idea of getting it on Amazon and New York Times list was nothing, meant nothing to me. It was a matter of getting it all down, sort of looking back and telling this story. So.
And I've heard that before from authors, John, that oftentimes books of this nature, the ones that can be very deep and revealing and cathartic, I think it takes an extra measure to put them out there in places like Amazon and make them available, because it's a very personal story. I found it fascinating for a variety of reasons, not only because of what you refer to as the crash and burn, but also because there was so much, having grown up in that same location and so many of the same memories or similar memories, the same people and places. It was fascinating to read it and be able to actually, for me, for people I think who grew up in Portland, to hear you talk about certain places and certain people and say, oh yeah, okay, I know that place, I know that person. And but I would say for anybody, I think it's a fascinating read. So I would just mention that. What is it about? And you've been now with the Seattle Symphony for a number of years. You mentioned the Oregon Symphony, you mentioned the Portland Youth Symphony in your younger days. Seattle Symphony now for how many years?
42, 3.
What is it about that? I understand that there are elements, because of what's happened in the past, that it can still be probably, and you can address this too, walking out onto that stage even now after all these years, I'm sure that there's a mixture of emotions and effects that take place. But what is it about being a part of the symphony that you love, that speaks to you?
It's maybe a compulsion that I have to do this still. I still have to play the violin. And last night, for example, we had this Baroque concert.
Mm-hmm.
Vivaldi and Mozart are still getting standing ovations.
Yeah.
And just to be a part of that, it still means a lot to me. On the other hand, I see myself in the mirror getting older, and I still think I play very crisp, and I don't embarrass myself for the orchestra yet, I don't think. And so it's just what I do. And yet the day's coming, probably pretty soon, that I think maybe I should let it go and sail over the horizon.
I'll be interested to find out if you can ever really let it go.
I don't know.
Whatever that looks like, I can imagine that sometimes we reach a point where we say, I can't continue to do this professionally, or I can't continue to do this consistently. But I think that violin and that bow are going to be an extension of you probably for the remainder of your days, John. That's just a guess. But you talked a little bit about the Baroque concert last night. Anything specific about that? How was it? You said still getting standing ovations. I imagine it was well attended and well received. What were your thoughts about last night's Baroque concert?
I wish I could say it was well attended. It was a little sparse out there actually last night. I don't know what the situation is with Baroque. We've often in years past plastered the hall full of people out
Yeah.
there. It was a little sparse last night, but in terms of numbers, but very enthusiastic concert. And this Vivaldi in particular was a duet for two violins and chamber orchestra. Just delightful stuff. It was like, it sort of sounded like the Four Seasons kind of music. But it wasn't the Four Seasons. It was for two violins, but it was sort of in that vein, and it was not too long a piece. But it was virtuosic, and the audience just loved it, and they stood up and cheered.
Well,
and they did four after the Mozart. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I just think it would always be lovely. I know I've been in enough performance and presentation situations. You'd like to see more people in the seats because you want more people to appreciate it, but I would say if you had an audience there that fully appreciated what was being presented, then it was worthwhile. My thought has often been, and I've told people who are in performance settings, if you've got that one person out there in the audience who is affected positively by it, then it was probably worth it. So
sure. I should say that last week we played Brahms Concerto with Hilary Hahn. Now, there wasn't an empty seat in the hall for that.
Okay.
So
and you never know. You never know. I want to transition a little bit and talk a little bit about sailing and your boat. And you lived on the boat in Puget Sound for a period of time up until really fairly recently. Talk a little bit about life in, on, and with a boat.
You can't live in Seattle very long without seeing all that water out there and the mountains beyond, and it's a picture postcard, and I wanted to be in the picture. And also, when I first got in the Seattle Symphony, one of our violinists lived on a boat with her at Shoal Shoal out here with her husband and daughter and dog and goldfish and hamsters, and had me over for dinner. And I couldn't believe it. I had no idea this was possible. And it again, another switch went off. It bit me, and I'd lived on the boat, my boat, for 33 years, and called it Poem because that piece means a lot from my past, and have just found it's like living in a cabinet, in a teak cabinet. Up until just a few years ago, had a little heart situation. Thought we'd move into the condo. So,
but you're still within. You're still very close physically to the location of the boat. It's still an active part of your.
Absolutely. In fact, you know how the weather's changed just recently. I feel like it's about a week and a half ago. I was still in my shorts working on my teak outside on the deck, and that was I was loving it. Yeah. Good. And by the way, if except that I'm re-rigging the boat right now too, so half of my rigging is down. Okay. It's a very important thing to do eventually on a sailboat. But if I had my rigging today after the show, there's a race going on out here called Race Your House, which is if you live on your boat, it's a race for non-racers, something like that.
Okay.
All right. I'm not doing it.
Do you have a favorite when you take the boat out? Is there a favorite direction you like to go, place you like to go that just is part of opening yourself up to whatever the world is providing out there?
Yeah, it's a kind of a big boat, so I don't like. It's not really a day sailing kind of boat, because it's sort of a project to get the thing ready to go and whatnot. But so I like to do overnighters, and Poulsbo is nearby over here. It's a favorite place. It's 2.5 hours away. Go anchor out there, digging into shore. There's great restaurants. I have friends over there. People know me. There's a pirate that lives on his boat out there. We know each other. I mean, 3-cornered hat and everything.
That's great. That's great.
So Poulsbo, but for the last at least 20 years, I've been pretty much single-handing sailing, going up into Canada and whatnot. Yeah. Tough to get into the last few years, but this year we made it across the border.
Excellent. So. Very good. You mentioned as well, you're talking about we here, but you also talked about spending time in Japan, learning functional Japanese, and it's good to be able to still practice when you've learned a language. Do you have someone that you practice with?
Well, my lady Yoshiko, we speak Japanese every day, for the most part, until I can't understand it, and then we go to English.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have someone. It's wonderful to have someone in your life. First of all, it's wonderful to have someone in your life who shares and appreciates the things that are important to you. And I just think it's wonderful that because, well, in addition to everything else, that goes with it. You get with Oshiko, you get that opportunity to continue to use your Japanese and to experience that cultural and important part of your life as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's good.
We were hoping to go this fall, but I probably next year I'll be taking some time off from the symphony, and we'll go to Japan and live in Kobe for a while with her sister, that sort of thing. So we're tossing that idea around.
Good.
And
anything else? Is there anything else you talked about? How many more years you might be able to participate actively in playing the violin? Trips back to Japan. Is there anything else on John Weller's bucket list? Anything else that you would still like to accomplish? Someplace you haven't sailed to yet? Something you have not yet accomplished that is still part of your dream?
It's a tough question, I think, but you know, traveling and that kind of thing, that common answer is the first thing that comes to mind. But this is it. I think on my bucket list, at least I have to do this, is I want to feel an ocean swell under my own keel. I've been out in the ocean. I've sailed back from Hawaii from Hawaii to Seattle on another boat, and I did also the Baja Haha, which is a race from San Diego down to Cabo San Lucas. So I've been out in the ocean, way out in the ocean, way out, and I know what that feels like, but not under my own boat's keel, and that's what I want to do. Being a member of the Puget Sound Cruising Club, it's a very humble club. It's a cruising club for people that don't want to belong to clubs, is their motto. Is planning sort of a regatta or armada to Barkley Sound next summer, which you got to get out there in the exposed to the Pacific.
Yeah,
it's it's just, if the weather's right, it's no problem. So, but that's what I want to do. That would be next July-ish, something like that. And that's why I'm getting the boat ready right now. I'm redoing the rigging. I changed to all lithium iron phosphate batteries, got solar panels. It's all great stuff. You know, you have to be a diesel mechanic and electrician and plumber and all that stuff to be successful and be ready to handle what goes wrong.
Shalane asked in here, will you sail to Japan? I suspect probably not, but
people do, but
that's an entirely different adventure.
That's a different adventure.
Anything that I haven't asked you about, John, that you just would like to share today?
Just looking back, I feel so grateful for a life in music. First of all, it's made anything else possible for me. And but it's been a life of melancholy, always wishing that this thing never happened, that I could play like I was 17. I mean, effortlessly, you know. But that's all. I have a great sense of humor, but it's got to come out because this thing is still a weight over me, and but I'm just eternally grateful for being able to have done this all my life.
Well, John Weller, thank you, first of all, for again taking the time to be here today, for sharing your story, for sharing a little bit of your time with us. And let me just say, as a friend, as someone who has known you in various capacities over the years, I appreciate your gift. I appreciate your candor, and just encourage you to just through all the elements of life, continue to be who you are, because I think you're an amazing person. And your story is an inspirational one. So thank you.
It means a lot, Steve. Thanks so much. Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself, and if you can, hang on here for a second till after the show. I got a couple of things to ask you about. But thanks, John.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, sir.
All right, listen, if you weren't fascinated by John and his story, and if it didn't encourage you to find some classical music and put it on, I don't know what would. If you've been following this, I saw some great comments and questions in there. Thank you. I didn't get a chance to say hello. I saw Lila Swafford tuned in. If you tuned in and I didn't get a chance to see you up there or see your comments, make sure you let us know in the chat. I know sometimes it's strange, at least through the production platform. I don't know that I see every single person that comes in here. So if I haven't acknowledged you, I'll look for you on the Facebook feed later on. And that brings up another point. If you tune in later on and watch this recorded, make sure that you also make your comments and answer your questions or ask your questions. John, I don't know if he'll have an opportunity to, but I'll give him access to where the feed is. If he has an opportunity to go in, he may be able to address some of the questions that came up here, come up later. I want to tell you about a couple of things that are coming up. Just a reminder, last week we had Chrissy Whitehead on the show, who is a Broadway actress, done a number of shows in the past, and is now a teacher, a mentor, a coach, a choreographer, a director in New York and in various places around the country. But last week when she was on, we talked about the fact that her show, her one-woman show, a show that she wrote called In My Own Little Corner, a work in progress with bipolar disorder. Look, I know that sounds like you're kind of going, well, that's a weird topic. Trust me, I've seen a little bit of what she's doing. She and I've talked about it. This is an amazing show. If you're in the East Coast area, anywhere where you can get to New York, you can still buy tickets. You can go to Chrissy's website, chrissywhitehead.com, and scroll down to the bottom and you'll see how you can get tickets. Or if you can't be there, to donate to the benefit that this show is supporting. And just wanted to, along with that, remind you that I said at the beginning, it's not going to be a Coffee Breaks with Steve next week on November 5th, because Carol and I get to be in New York next week. We're going to see several shows, including Chrissy's show next Saturday. We get to be there in person and actually see her show. I want to let you know that the following week when we get back, our favorite bibliophile and book expert, Ann Davis East, is going to be with us again on November 12th. She's going to talk about banned books that have been banned and taken out of libraries, taken off of circulation, and share a little bit about that. And then the week after that, on the 19th, another friend from years past and someone who I know knows John and vice versa, Jim Mockford, who's going to be with us, who is a kite aficionado and an author of a kid's book that's based on some personal experience, The Kite That Touched the Sky. We're going to talk to Jim, and I think that'll be a lot of fun as well. Last thing I wanted to mention to you, a couple of things is don't forget that there is a Coffee Breaks with Steve roundtable that's also available on Facebook, a group that's available where we sometimes follow up with things that we didn't get to in the show or just questions that come up during the show. Look for that. But also, we are now available post-show as a podcast. We're on Spotify. Coffee Breaks with Steve is both an audio and video podcast. Episodes are up there. And you can also find audio versions of our show on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. So just invite you to look for the show where you are able to and share it with others if you think they would be interested in a particular topic or a particular guest. That brings up another point, and that is that if you have ideas for topics, if you have ideas for guests that you would like to see on the show, especially if you have good contact information for those guests and can make an introduction, just share anything that you have. You can reach out to me by email at cwsteve@comcast.net, or you can put them on the Facebook page for Coffee Breaks with Steve. But your ideas become part of what the show is about. You know, we're all part of this. So I just want to once again thank you for being here today. Thank John Weller once again for being here and sharing his time and his story. And just want to remind you that as the seasons change, as we get into this upcoming holiday season, there are people out there who have needs. There are things in the community that you can do, and you can share your voice. We have an election day coming up. That's a great opportunity to exercise your rights and your privilege and your franchise as a citizen, and to know what you need to vote about, to cast your votes intelligently. But whatever that may be, I just encourage you, as I do every week, to find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.